Joining us on the conversation today, we have a fellow YouTuber and physical media collector, my man, Brother Dell. What's going on?
What's up, man? How you doing today?
Good, good. I know people always say, why does he call him that? If you don't know that, now you know. I think my first question will give a little insight to why I give him that name. But the way we do this, you've seen a couple of conversations. We start off with a non-movie question. From there, we get into the good stuff. It's a back and forth. So you have questions for me or you just want to vibe on something, we go ahead and do so.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to start off with a non-movie question. And this one is near and dear to my heart as someone who lives now in Kansas City, but grew up elsewhere, grew up in Brooklyn. So for you, what was the biggest culture shock coming from Queens, New York, to North Carolina?
The biggest culture shock, and I don't know if Kansas City has the same problem, not problem, but the biggest culture shock, something is just being able to get food any time of night. That was the
Yes.
biggest culture shock for me.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
it's changed a little bit here recently, the last 10 years or so, but I've been in North Carolina now for over 20 years. And when I first got here, it was like, everything shuts down 9, 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just want some takeout at 1 in the morning.
Yep. You're used to like coming from the party and you want some Chinese food and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, but you got money, you could get some fried rice and call it a night.
Exactly.
Can't do that anymore.
No.
But yeah, I understand. It's like the closest thing I got to that is I guess we could hit Denny's or IHOP, but that pales in comparison to having options at midnight or whatever time it is.
Exactly. So yeah, Denny's and IHOP is it pretty much that time of night. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Or Awful House, as I call it.
Yeah. Waffle House is only good if you've been drinking quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. and drinking that gut rock too, not even the good stuff.
Exactly.
Oh man, a couple of questions before we get into the five takes. I was looking at like your site, not really get into the analytics and all that, but I see your most viewed video was your Criterion and Arrow sale haul. People like to see us unbox things and show off what we picked up. But for you, like, what aspect do you enjoy recording the most? Is it that, the top tens, the rankings, the collections? What is it?
For me, it's the top tens and the watch these movies, the recommendation videos, and
I like those.
Yeah, the recommendation videos actually my least viewed as a group, but I'm all about exposing people to movies that they may not have seen, may not have heard of. So those are really my favorite ones. And the top tens, because I'm just a list guy. I've been doing lists since I was a kid. Top 10. I was more heavily into sports when I was younger. So top 10 right fielders, top 10 point guards, top 10 whatever. I've been making lists for forever, so I'm a list guy too.
Yeah. The one aspect of your videos that I do really enjoy is that you tend to put a focus on people of color, not just African Americans, not just Black people, but people of color. So you might do like when you did Huck's top 25, it wasn't just like, your favorite Black actresses or whatever. You went across different diasporas and you included different people. I love that about your videos. Your recent video, you shared about two movies that you didn't really like and the reasons behind it. That commentary aspect, will you be doing more stuff like that in the future?
Yes, because that's also near and dear to my heart. As far as actors and actresses and just people of color in movies, I mean, we know it. It's been documented. We're not as well represented. So, and again, so I do want to shine a light on those creators who are of color and may not have gotten the recognition that I think they deserve anyway. And and I am who I am. So when I watch a movie, I can't put me away. So, and I know
Right.
a lot of people want to watch movies for escapism, and I do too. I watch plenty of movies for escapism. I'm an MCU fan. I'm a Star Wars fan, but at the end of the day, I'm still who I am. So if something kind of doesn't sit right with me and is for a reason that others might find political, then I still have to speak on it. I still have to say, hey, here's my perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's important because, some people shy away from it or feel like the audience or the viewing people may not want to see that. But I think it is, because if nobody else is highlighting this, the audience may not know, you know.
Exactly.
So they may not know of Michelle Yeoh when she was in Police Story 3, but they know it now because of Everything Everywhere All at Once. So
Right.
it's good to show like somebody was doing their thing from back in the day. You just may not have heard of them. Or it might be a character actor that you may not have heard of. You just saw her in the background or whatever the case may be.
Exactly, exactly. And there's lots of them. And we get to this thing where I might have mentioned it in the video too. There are certain actors and directors that what we call, black famous. Lots and
Mm-hmm.
lots of black people know them, but other
Mm-hmm.
people might not. And it goes the same way in different ethnicities also. We talk about Michelle Yeoh or even a Salma Hayek. They know her from stuff like Grown Ups and From Dusk Till Dawn. Well, she's got a whole bunch of other movies out there that you don't know about, that where she's actually has to do some acting, and she is a talented actress, not just the pretty wife or girlfriend in American movies.
Yeah. And there's a lot of actors and actresses like that, as well as directors too.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's very important. I say the term hood classic, and you know what I mean. You a New
yeah,
Yorker, you grew up in the same time as me.
yeah.
So first of all, for those that don't know, please describe what a hood classic is.
Well, it kind of goes back to what we just talked about,
That's why
the
I was
black
bringing
famous.
it up.
Yeah, it's movies that they're classics in certain parts of the country or to certain people in the country. And in our case, it's mostly they're classics in black neighborhoods and black families. If I walk into certain black houses, not as much now because everybody streams, other than us guys like us, but everybody at one point, if I walked into a house, there was a copy of What's Love Got to Do with It. There was a copy of Boys in the Hood. There was a copy of Friday. Growing up, that's what I thought. Everybody, knew those movies, loved those movies. And then when I, got out into the world and met people who were not like me, and they were like, "Yeah, I never heard of that." So yeah, hood classics. These are classics in the hood.
So with that in mind, what are some hood classics that are only on DVD or, God forbid, only on VHS that you would like to see get a Blu-ray or 4K upgrade? I know you could rattle off at least 5 of them off the top.
Dead Presidents. That's for one. That's
That
one.
that should get a criterion.
It should. I totally agree. That should get a criterion. I would love for that to get a criterion. South Central. Have you seen
Ooh,
South Central?
good one. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, South Central is another awesome movie. It got overshadowed because it came in that Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society era. There's a movie called Caught Up. That's the name of the movie. I don't know if it has it might have a Blu-ray. Caught Up has Bokeem Woodbine in it, and he's the main character, and he's kind of not really a private eye, but he's kind of going through some things, and he gets caught up with a lady who's kind of got some psychic powers or kind of deal going. So that's a fun one. And really, even going back a little further, just some of the blaxploitation stuff, I would love to see a penitentiary box set. I don't know if you've seen the penitentiary
That
movie.
would be nice.
That would be nice. And one that I think will probably happen eventually is even though the first movie's on Blu-ray, is a Friday box set. Really need a
Hmm.
Friday box set.
Yeah.
So
I know Spike is your favorite director, Spike Lee. So I'll add one more to that, and I will say Spike Lee did a thing with ESPN on Kobe called Kobe Doing Work.
yeah,
You could only find it on DVD, so that would be a
yeah.
nice upgrade.
And to be honest, half of Spike Lee's filmography is only on DVD.
Girl Six.
Yeah, Girl Six and
She's Gotta Have It.
Gotta Have It. So a Spike Lee box set would be great too.
All right. Let's get into the 5 spooky season takes. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, man. So number 1, name the horror movie that made you fall in love with the genre.
So this is almost like a triple-headed monster here.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, I would say The Exorcist is a movie I saw way too young, scared the crap out of me. I must have been 8 years old, 9 years old when I saw The Exorcist. And
Me too.
yeah, and it just scared the crap out of me. But I wanted to see more scary stuff after that. But then the other part of that is the first 2 Friday the 13th movies together. I saw the second one first, and then I saw the original, and I saw those before I ever saw Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I was like 12, 13, when they came out. Don't ask me how I saw the second one first. I don't remember. But those were more like, oh, wait, there's kind of scary, but it's fun. And at 12, I was like, definitely want more of this. I want something scary and fun. So those are the movies that really kind of got me into horror.
By chance, did you see it at a summer day camp? Because that sounds like freakishly similar to me. It's like I saw part 2 and then part 1 at a summer day camp, because what they would do is they would have the older teenagers watching the younger ones. And then when we'd go to do like arts and crafts or whatever, they'd let them watch like a rated R movie. And it was like in cafeteria that they took over. So I would go in there to like get some water or try to find food or whatever. And they were watching this movie. So I'm like literally just standing in the back watching Friday the 13th part 2 and just scaring the crap out of me. But at the same time, I can't look away.
Right.
And then I heard them talking about watching another one. So I pretty much did the same thing when they went to watch the other one. Why they watch it out of order, I don't know. But that's how I saw those first 2 movies. So
yeah,
that's funny.
No day camp for me. I came down from New York. I came down from Queens to Raleigh, North Carolina, to visit my grandparents, and I stayed for the summer. And I've always been a night owl, so I stayed up late at night watching movies every night. And that's how. And one night part 2 was on, so I watched it, and then another night the original was on, so I watched that.
Let's continue talking about horror movies. Let's stick on this question for a little bit and talk about number 2. Name 5 of your favorite horror movies.
All right, so my first one that I went with is this movie right here, and it's Happy Birthday to Me. Let me see if it can actually focus there. It's not doing it, but Happy Birthday to Me is the movie. And if the person who it's about is actually not on the cover, it's a girl named Jenny. And if you watched growing up when we grew up, Little House on the Prairie was somehow always on the TV, Channel 11.
Mm-hmm.
Even though nobody in my house really cared about Little House on the Prairie, it was just somehow always on.
You knew it was on, though.
Yeah, you know it was on. So the younger daughter in that show, and if you don't know Little House on the Prairie, go look it up. She's the main character here, and she's a college girl, and she's part of this group. They call themselves the 10 or the elites of this little college. But she had a traumatic accident, and she's having some trouble remembering things. And of course, her friends are they're a bunch of jerks, and all of a sudden they start getting knocked off one by one, because that's what you do in slasher flicks. And it's a mystery. So you got to figure out which one of them is killing all the other ones. And for me, it was intriguing. It was one of the first, after the original Friday the 13th, it was one of the first slasher mystery movies that I saw. So it always stuck with me and always liked it. And when I rewatched it, when we talked about doing this, you can see some of the places where they put red herrings in or things to try to throw you off. So for instance, like there's a spot right at the beginning, there's a killing right at the beginning, and you only see the killers like from the back, their shoulder, and you see their scarf. Pretty distinctive scarf. It's like pink, purple and gray striped scarf. And then the next scene, you cut to everybody in this group, and they all have the exact same scarf. So it's like it was immediately, it was like it could be anybody, and that kind of that kind of was fun for me. And then the end was just crazy. So, I always have a soft spot for that movie.
Yeah, it was good to revisit this because you hold up that cover and that's how I remember that movie. I mean, that was a a box cover that you went into, like you said, any mom and pop video store and you saw that on the shelf. And you might take that out time and time again just to watch again because it's one of those, like you said, it's a horror movie, but it's also a mystery movie because even though you knew how it ended, it was one of those mystery movies where it had rewatchability to it. And being one of the earlier slasher movies, I really enjoyed the fact that it had so many twists.
Yes,
It's like when you thought you were right, you were wrong.
right, exactly. And it just kept you guessing right up until the
Hmm.
end. And then when you finally get the reveal, you're like, wait, how? What?
How?
And then it starts playing over in your head. So I always had a soft spot for that movie.
Number two.
All right, number two is I'm going even further back into the 70s, and I'm going with Blackula, the original Blackula. There's also the sequel, Scream, Blackula, Scream. I like that one, and plus it has Pam Grier. I love Pam Grier, but the
Hmm.
original is the one that really, it was not too long after Exorcist for me that I actually saw Blackula. And I had seen, it's a couple of vampire things, but of course I had never seen a black vampire. So that was a big deal. It's like, wait a minute, we can have black vampires and they could be cool. So he was cool. And then for people who don't know the story, the main character's name is actually Mama Waldy. It's not actually Blackula. It's Mama Waldy, and he's an African prince, and I think the 16th or 17th century. He goes to Transylvania to protest the slave trade, basically. And he gets caught up a double crossed by Count Dracula because he actually goes to see Count Dracula. It's not quite clear what Count Dracula is going to do about the slave trade, but Dracula kind of hems him up and turns him into a vampire, but he seals him in a casket and ships him off. And next time someone opens the casket, is 1970s LA, and you got this 17th century vampire just kind of rooting around. And of course, he runs into a woman who looks exactly like his wife, so he's got to go try and get his wife. Pretty much same plot as Vampire in Brooklyn. If some of you have seen
Yeah.
Brooklyn,
Wow, I didn't think about that. It's true.
yeah,
It
yeah,
does have the same plot.
same plot. Blackula
Wow.
is better though. I personally prefer Blackula. Vampire in Brooklyn's pretty good. And the fun part is the main actor, William Marshall, the guy that plays Blackula. He's um he's a classically trained Shakespearean actor, and he's doing this B movie, B vampire movie, and everybody else around him is doing B movie stuff. And then his performance, he's kind of mixing the B movie stuff with the Shakespearean gravitas, and it is just the most craziest performance, and it's a lot of fun. And then by the end, you actually feel sympathy for him. He's a sympathetic character.
Yeah. Uh, it was funny because when you tell people that aren't familiar with this title, they're like, yeah, come on, right? Seriously? Blackula? You made that up. No, that is the name of the movie.
That's the name of the movie. And I've hated the name. I've hated on it for a while because it's like, Blackula. We couldn't come up with something better than
I
Blackula,
know, right?
right? But then you got to remember the blaxploitation era. To order to get audiences in, it was always black something. To give a familiarity. Like, hey, you like this, so here's the black this. And they did a lot of that, and it was the same with this movie.
Yeah. And there were a couple of things that really stood out about this one. For one, they got a popular of the time R&B group to basically do the soundtrack for it. So
Yeah.
for the time, it had some really funky, groovy music.
Oh yeah, and
And
that's a big thing in blaxploitation. They had a lot of R&B. I mean, a lot of groups that did soundtracks for movies and did the whole score for the movie.
and this is coming off the popularity of Shaft. I know a lot of Criterion collectors have that in their collection now. So you have to realize what Shaft did for legitimizing the blaxploitation genre. And from there, it kind of opened up the market for, well, now we could do this kind of movie and this kind of movie. And like you said, you mean we could be vampires? Yeah, you could have that kind of movie as well. And you got a couple of different horror movies after this too. So it was kind of like one begot the other.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There are some good ones out there. JD's Revenge is just a recommendation. If you haven't seen JD's Revenge, check that out.
Yeah, definitely. This had a lot of different genres in it. So what was it about the horror aspect of it that appealed to you?
It did have a lot of different genres in it. For me, I'm a vampire fan. I like vampires, and you'll see we'll talk a little bit more about vampires a little bit later. But so for whatever reason, they've always been cool to me. I've always liked, even going back to Bela Lugosi in the 1930s. So that was automatically something that drew me in. And like I said before, yeah, wait a minute, we got a black vampire. And then there was just enough horror, at least when I saw it, that kind of stuck with me. So, for instance, there's the scene in the morgue where the woman comes that was turned comes busting out of the one room and running down the hallway at the camera. And she's got the full vampire makeup going on. And when you see that for the first time at 8, 9 years old, that was truly horrifying. And that image, I swear, has never left my head. Now, for people who don't know, who I am 51 years old, and I saw this at like 9, and that image never left my head, even though there was a stretch where I hadn't seen the movie. I saw it, a few times as a teenager, and then didn't watch it again until well into my 30s, maybe even my 40s again. But that image was still always there. So that was always one of those things, was like, okay, that's scary to me. That just her coming down the hallway like that.
That was our jump scares.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Except it was a longer take and it really like cemented an image in your head.
It did.
Oh, same thing happened to me when I rewatched it. I was like, I remember this. It just came rushing back to me. It's like, I remember this. She's coming right for me. Yeah. I mean, when you're a kid, you just think they're gonna come through that TV or they're gonna come through that screen or whatever it is.
Oh, I had some trouble sleeping that night, believe me.
Yeah, there's something about vampire movies. I'm kind of like the same way. Right now we had the two recent releases of Fright Night and The Lost Boys, two popular 80s vampire movies. Which do you prefer between the two?
Fright Night. Again, it's that cool factor for me.
I say Fright Night's a better movie, but to me, Lost Boys is a cooler movie because of the cast.
The cast is, Kiefer Sutherland. I get it.
Yeah, but, say no more.
Yeah. But, for me, it was, the vampire in Fright Night. That was like, whoa, he was like, man, this was 80s cool. He was 80s cool to me.
Yeah, for sure. So give me your third one.
All right, since we started talking about vampires, let's keep talking about vampires. And this movie is called Thirst. And Thirst is a Korean vampire movie directed by Park Chan-wook. Some of you might know him from Old Boy. Old Boy is his most popular movie, one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's just an amazing movie. And he also directed The Handmaiden a few years back that got some critical acclaim. So Thirst, we meet a priest, and he's just out trying to do some good in the world. And there's this virus that's been killing lots and lots of folks. So he wants to go and go to see if he can help out. He does some research, but they warn him he could become infected. And he does. And it's a virus that is actually a deadly virus. It's a fatal virus. But he gets a blood transfusion, and suddenly he's healed. And come to find out, what was injected into him was vampire blood. And it's not only healing him, of course, it's just turning him full-fledged vampire. And he's got that thirst after the title.
Although I'm a big fan of Park Chan-wook, this is one that I've never seen before. So thank you for putting me onto it, because
absolutely,
wow, the turns that it takes, and it's almost like a slow burn of sorts because it's
Mhm.
not like, oh, he got bit and now he's a vampire himself.
Right.
It's like progression over
Yeah.
the movie, and it's like one one by one, moment by moment, he's getting these vampire like things
Right.
happening to him.
Right.
And it's just an interesting development throughout the movie to see how it builds up to the ending.
Oh yeah. And it's definitely kind of slow going in the early parts of it. And yeah, things just start happening to him. And he a lot of the movie is not just what's happening, but how he's coming to grips with it, and how he has to interact with others while he's doing that. And it's for me, him being a priest is also a major reason that I kind of like the movie. Is because one of the things that it always interests me is when we have a character or a person in real life even who clearly struggle with uh, how to how their spirituality and their sexuality coexist, and he is dealing with that. I mean, full on. He's been suppressing his natural sexuality like his whole life. He even the one scene he tells he never ever kissed anybody, and then now suddenly he's a vampire, and those hormones are raging out of control. So, so and that's always really fascinating to me.
And the one of the things that I really enjoyed about it is that it stars one of my favorite South Korean actors, which is Song Kang Ho.
Mm-hmm.
And you might know him from Parasite
Yeah.
or from Snowpiercer, Memories of Murder, if you've seen that, especially with the Criterion release, The Host. So he's someone that both Park and Bong Joon-ho use a lot in their movies. He's a popular actor. I picture him almost like an American version of a Tom Hanks or something like that. It's like
Right.
he's the popular actor to get to be in your
He,
movie kind of thing.
he is, and he's awesome. For me though, it was the young lady, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on her name right now. But the young lady, for me, her performance in this movie was just it was crazy. The range that she showed, going from uh, pretty meek and not quite demure, but definitely definitely an injured bird, so to speak. And then where she ends
Yeah,
up,
she
it's
blossoms.
yeah,
She
she definitely
blossoms.
blossoms.
Let's talk about, it's a vampire movie. So is that the horror aspect right there?
That's it. And for me, I found horror in what he's dealing with, and the of course the ending. Again, I don't want to spoil that, but the way that the ending plays out. So the horror for me was not just that he was a vampire, but it was just what he had to deal with. And I I like horror that is I like a lot of different kinds of horror, but if you can make me think and I can actually also have empathy for the character in the movie and understand what they're afraid of, then that works for me. And for him,
Mm-hmm.
I understood what he was afraid of. I understood that everything that he was going through, everything that he was becoming was 100% against everything he had believed beforehand. And
Yeah,
that was a struggle.
this is another one where you start to feel for him at the end,
Yeah, yeah,
like you mentioned about Blackula.
yeah. You definitely feel for him at the end. And for
Yeah,
him, really, I feel for him all the way through because it's like, man, this poor guy, he just doesn't know what to do with himself. And
yeah. He tries to help. He gets a virus.
yeah,
It goes
exactly.
from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. All right. So let's move on with the fourth one.
All right, my fourth pick was an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and this one is Maggie, and it's a zombie movie. And for this one, honestly, I rewatched it again the other night, and it is definitely a slow burn movie, but it kind of strikes at my core because I'm a girl dad, so I have two girls. So it's like if something's wrong with them or something's going on with them, and all they have left is me, what am I going to do? So that this kind of stuck with me. And in this case, the zombie outbreak apocalypse has already happened. It's been going on for a while. So when you get infected, when someone gets infected, it's like, okay, you can stay home for about 5 weeks, but then we're going to send you into quarantine where you're going to turn or be exterminated. I don't think that's ever quite made clear. So his daughter becomes infected and he takes her home and he struggles with the idea of, what's going to happen at the end of these 5 weeks? Am I actually going to turn her in to be quarantined, or is someone going to come snatch her out of my home and take her away? And he struggles with that, and it's again that just kind of struck at the core of my own existence. Even though obviously my daughter's not a zombie, but what would I do if all my daughter had was me and there was something seriously wrong with her, where the rest of the world was not only going to shun her but maybe come for her?
Hmm. You said you recently rewatched this one too?
Yeah, actually, we watched it a couple nights ago. And the other thing that struck me about this movie is this is Arnold Schwarzenegger really acting. I mean, he's turning one of his best acting performances, in my opinion. I mean, he's not relying on quips and one-liners, and he's not relying on muscles. He's really given a really solid performance here, and I really enjoyed that. And Abigail Breslin is just as good. I mean, she's kind of going through the ringer, and she wears it right on her face, and she feels like a real teenager that would be kind of dealing with this kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to it that I really enjoyed, even on the rewatch. Um, One, I love the look of it because it's kind of desaturated, which kind of makes everyone who's infected look even more sick
Yeah,
because they look pale of sorts. And I'm sure they applied makeup and everything, but that just added to the look.
right.
Um, Two, like you mentioned, Arnold's performance here, it's not your typical action movie. You could really feel the emotion in his acting and everything. Question for you though, since you watched it recently, did it hit different after the pandemic?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Everything is different after the pandemic. I mean, it was like, wow, and all zombies movies are like that now. It's like, man, you know what? We were right there. We're this close. In 2020, we were on the cusp of zombie outbreak. And even a movie going back as far as like Contagion, when I watched it in 2011 when it came out, it was like, man, that's crazy. Imagine if something like that happened, and then lo and behold. So yeah, definitely
Hmm.
hit different. Maggie definitely hit different.
That movie was so hard to find when the pandemic first hit. It was like you couldn't find a physical copy of it. I don't know who was streaming it at the time, but everybody wanted to watch Contagion.
Right, right.
This is another slow burn one, and it was like I was seeing like a theme here. It's like, oh, we're getting the slow build up to a change or a transformation of sorts.
Mhm.
And you see that in Thirst, you see it again now here in Maggie. So there's a horror aspect, but it's not your typical zombie movie horror aspect.
Right. It's not. And for me, it's like, you know, for horror movies, I love a lot of the classic horror movies. Halloween's and the Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I love those, but the ones that stick with me more are the ones that do that. It's a build to something, and then yeah, there's some sort of change, some sort of transformation, maybe some sort of deeper understanding is came to come to at the end of it.
Yeah. And your last one.
Not a slow build at all. My last one is actually my all-time favorite horror movie, and that one is Scream. So you guys know the story of Scream. Small town, bunch of high school kids starting to be murdered, and they seem to be going after one girl in particular. And you got the Ghostface killer going after her, and it's already been big news because one of the main characters, she had a major thing happen to her the year before. And again, I don't want to spoil it just in case anybody hasn't seen it. But yeah, for me, that is my favorite all time favorite horror movie. Just when I first time saw it, it was like, okay, that was pretty amazing. And then I watched it again, and it was like it's still held up. And I've seen it, I don't know, maybe a dozen times since then.
it definitely holds up. And like you said, when the 4K came out, that was another viewing of it. And it really, what was that, 96? So it really brought back the slasher genre for a little while.
Yeah,
You
for a
know,
little while.
you don't really get that much these days. We got other types of sub subgenres that people kind of flock to, but it was nice to see Wes Craven bring back that feel that we had in the 80s,
Yeah.
like with A Happy Birthday to Me, or in his case, A Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever. And how many sequels now? We're on 5, going on 6.
Going on 6, yeah. Get ready for
Whew.
Scream 6 or whatever I don't even know what they're calling it. So after just Scream 5 was just Scream again, which I hate when they do that.
Yeah. And, another recent release, we had the, what I call the Sorry Halloween movies that came out. So you
Yeah.
have 6, 7, and 8. I would say with H2O and Resurrection, you really got the Scream influence, whether it was just the posters or the way the movies were.
Yeah.
This was also a very meta movie.
It
And,
was.
you see a lot of that now, but you didn't see that in the 90s, which I think just adds to its brilliance.
And that is one of the reasons why it's my all-time favorite horror movie, because I'm an English major, was an English major in college, and took a lot of lit courses. And one of my favorite things was when we learned how to deconstruct text. So we had to write papers doing that. So when Scream came along, it was a movie that deconstructed slasher movies while at the same time simultaneously being a slasher movie, and a good one at that. And so that just automatically appealed to me because it was really meta and it hit on all the tropes, even though it told you, hey, look, this is what you got to do in a slasher movie. And then either it happened or it didn't happen right away, but it was with a purpose. And so I always look at Scream as a spoof. It's not, a straight up horror movie. It's a spoof. It's a horror comedy, in my opinion. And
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons why a lot of people love scary movies. But that's one of the reasons why I hate scary movie. I can't stand it because they made a poor spoof of a brilliant spoof.
Yeah.
I love slasher movies, and this managed to be a pure slasher. And like I said, and going back to Happy Birthday to Me, it had that mystery element too, where you had to try to figure out who the killer was, and there's lots of twists and turns to it, and again made fun of it at the same time, but in a loving way. It wasn't like, oh, look how stupid this is. It's like, hey, this is what we are, and let's now watch us do it. One of the things I like to do now is I watch a lot of people react to movies, and I will purposely seek out people who react to Scream who've not seen it before. And inevitably, they're all in their 20s. They're young people,
Yeah. Never seen it before.
never seen it before. And it's funny because a lot of times, I say more than 50% of the time, more than half the time, they'll figure out who the killer is halfway, maybe even earlier in the movie.
Hmm.
And I always think, you figure that out because in the 25, 26 years since Scream, every horror movie has tried to be Scream. Whereas when we first saw Scream,
It was
we didn't have
original.
that to go on.
Yeah. It was original.
Yeah, it was original. So when we got to the ending, it was really mind blowing. So for some now, it still hits them hard. It's still like, wow, they really did that. But they're more in tune to what's happening and can figure it out a little bit better than we did back in '96.
Yeah. I have to say, out of all the collection of movies that I watch, rewatch, this has been like my favorite set so far. So thank you for your choices that you made
Oh,
here, because
thank
it
you.
it shows a nice selection, a nice cross selection of movies too, going
Thank
back from the
you.
'70s coming up to almost the 2000s. So kudos.
Thank you. Thank you. I try.
Let's continue on with number 3. Name a classic horror movie that everybody loves, but you can't stand.
I got to go with the Blair Witch Project.
So Talk about it.
Everybody loved this movie and they swear by it. And first off, found footage is not my favorite genre. There are some good ones out there, but this one to me is just not it. I don't mind a slow build, and Blair Witch Project is definitely a slow build. You know, they're out there, they're trying to find the Blair Witch. It's definitely a slow build all the way through. I don't mind a slow build if it's what it's building to is worth all the effort. And I didn't feel like it was worth all the effort. And I think I kind of ruined it for myself because we saw it in late 96, early 97, something like that. I had read about the movie, and I don't know if you remember this, but the hysteria surrounding it was that, you know, this was a real found footage. These were real people that this happened to that we're getting to watch this movie about. And I had done some little bit of reading about it and knew that that wasn't the case. So I didn't have that same, you know, that same tension, that same empathy for them because it was like, this is just another movie. So I really understand all the hubbub about the Blair Witch product. I can't do it, man.
Yeah. I will give it credit for its place in the found footage subgenre history because after that is when I think found footage movies kind of took off and
Absolutely.
Paranormal Activity and Cloverfield and all that stuff after that. Lake Mungo.
Absolutely. And I like Paranormal Activity. I like Cloverfield. And again, in those movies, it's a case of okay, what we're building to, I felt was worth it when we got there. Whereas with the Blair Witch, it just didn't feel worth it to me.
Let's flip it. Number 4, name a critically hated horror movie that you love.
All right, so this is another slasher movie, and it kind of gets into that meta space where Scream does, but this is not as well received, and that is Dr. Giggles. So Larry Drake, who I knew from LA Law back in the day, he plays Dr. Giggles. Basically, he's a mental patient and he breaks loose from the asylum and he fancies himself a doctor, but he's really a serial killer. And it's hilarious, but it's just, you know, a lot of doctor quips and creative kills. There are some creative kills, which I do like with my slashers. If you're going to watch a slasher, it's got to have some creative kills in it. And I just laughed right from beginning to end when I watched that movie.
I could say the same thing, and I've only seen it once because that's all I needed to see it. 18% on Rotten Tomatoes, so you are in the minority, in the major minority.
Oh, absolutely! I know it. I know it.
So finally, number 5, who would you like to see me have a conversation with on this channel?
I'll give you a name that is not within the same exact circles that we travel in. He's been on YouTube for a little while though, and it is Mike at the Board Cyborg. He's a great guy. He's really into B movies. He's really into B horror movies, especially. So he's one of those guys that got vinegar syndrome.
I was just about to say the vinegar syndrome subscription guy.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, and Horror Pack and that kind of thing. I know lately he's not been posting as much as he had been in the past, but I think he would be someone good to talk to. Of course, you know, I got Big Chris, Floyd House Flicks.
Floyd House Flicks.
Yeah, Floyd.
I gotta say it every time.
Yeah, you gotta say it. He's so fun. He is so fun. So
he's a good brother too.
Yeah, he would definitely be somebody I would love for you to have on. And one more, another brother that hasn't been around in a while, and every now and again I'll message him on Instagram, make sure he's doing okay. But that is Jagoda Blue. So
yeah, man, I did the same thing. I reached out to him. I was like, "You good, fam? Where you been?"
Exactly.
I know life gets in the way very easily with
right.
YouTubers. You know, that's why I totally understand. Like when people say, "Yeah, I'm going to be taking a break," because you know this is not our priority. We're not getting paid primarily off of this. So, you know, if you got a little side hustle, that's one thing, but this ain't paying the bills for most of us. So I understand that. He's another Queens cat too.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But yeah, he's got an awesome collection and he's another great guy to talk to, man.
And so that's it. What you think?
Oh man, I had a blast.
Good, good. Same here. Tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. They're all Dell on Movies, and you can find me on Letterboxd. So you all Dell on Movies. Just
Easy enough. Easy
easy
enough.
enough. Hit me somewhere.
There you go. All right, man. Thanks again for having this conversation with me. It
Uh,
was a blast.
Thank you for having me, and just for people that are viewing out there, let you know KB he's a really great guy. When I was first starting my YouTube channel, and technically I'm really still first starting. I'm less than 50 videos in. He was one of the first people to reach out to me and say, "Hey, look, you know what? You could do this a little better, and you can do that a little better." And I truly appreciated that when you did that. And by all means, in the future, if you see something like that, just you see something where, hey, you know what? You could do this better. Just let me know. And I truly appreciate you doing that. And thank you truly for having me. And I almost forgot to show this that I'm actually wearing a horror shirt.
Yes. Love it.
All right.
Favorite movie.
Oh,
All
absolutely.
right, man. Have a good one.
All right. You too, man.